Everyone in Zoom, please put your mic on mute.
You may be seated. Memory.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בי נודש ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינהלני. נפשי ישובב, ינחני, במהג לצדק למען שמו, למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות, לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי, שבטך ומשענתך, שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי, דשנת בשמן ראשי כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
A psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. Giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit, guiding me in the right path, for that is God's essence. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. As I mentioned, we're here this morning to memorialize and to remember, and most importantly, I would say, to celebrate the life of a very special man, a son, a brother, a father, a husband, and a friend, Seth Zuckerman. And I'm going to call up family members and then friends to share some stories and insights about this very special young man who's taken from us far too soon. I'd like to begin by inviting up his sister, Maddie Natoli, to share some words with us about her brother.
Seth. Uncle Yesh, as Seth as Uncle Yesh. That's what Charlotte called you. What would you do? You'd probably come up here and make a joke. You know about the joke about the pencil? It's got no point to it. Then he'd probably tell me to keep it under 3 minutes. It's going to be tough, as I don't think I could sum up my brother so succinctly. But Seth couldn't sum up anything in 3 minutes. If I could sum up Seth in one line, it's that he was the most generous, caring, kind, honest, sometimes too honest, funny, easy to talk to, humble, smart, curious, adventurous, positive, brave, so brave, decisive, and down for anything human being. Seth was always a realistic but positive person. Even when staring down the most daunting adversity one could face, looking back at how brave he was for so long, I know all the jokes and levity he brought to his cancer battle was more so for us than for him. Despite his prognosis and everything else he withstood, he did it all with a smile on his face and dad jokes ready in hand to be launched at any time. Seth loved creating traditions, and he was always so inclusive. It didn't matter if a group of people didn't know each other. He would bring everyone together. Apple picking, Christmas in Atlantic City, Iron Seth, or just going to the beach. He just loved bringing people together. I'm sure there was always a part of him who was just curious to see what would happen. But it always turned out to be beautiful. He loved hosting Iron Seth, his self-branded cooking competition, coming up with the next secret ingredient, asking for my advice. What other swag could he put his Iron Seth logo on? And he would invite the whole world, even if it was only in his 800 square foot apartment. I'd be concerned about where are we going to fit all these people and the logistics, but Seth, he'd just laugh and say, we'll figure it out. And Seth, that was Seth. No matter what, it was always about being inclusive and bringing people together. Over the years, he became friends with my friends and always asked about them. He left his mark on everyone, even if he only met you once. He'd remember something special he learned about you, and everyone remembered him too. And since he was this special kind of person who could talk to anybody, he was always my go-to person to bring to gatherings where I didn't know anybody, because in no time, he would know just about everybody in the room. Seth loved all the major essences of life: family, people, food, nature, and he loved to share, like making jam. We'd go peach picking, and I would look at him afterwards and ask, what are we going to do with 30 pounds of peaches? And he would say, oh, this would just make the most delicious jam. And we'd spend hours making a mess, making jam, and he'd bring a jar to anyone who he would visit. I'm pretty sure I still have some vintage years in my pantry, and I bet some of you do too. We used to travel so much together. We loved to ski together. Every year, since he had cancer, he'd always say to me, I hope next year I feel better so we can go skiing again. But I promise, I'll make sure Hannah learns how to ski just for you. It still doesn't feel real that I just won't see you later, or next week, or whenever. I'll miss our long phone calls. When you were driving back from work at the end of the day and you just call to chat or check in on me on a variety of things. But I promise there will be an Iron Seth 2022, and everyone here is invited, even if I'm still living in Mom and Dad's house. I hope they don't mind. Seth, I love you. every day.
Thank you, Maddie. That was beautiful. I next like to call up Seth's parents, Jacqueline and Manny Zuckerman.
Take your mask off. Take my mask off. Take it off. Okay. Right here. When Seth was born, he was a cute, lovable, and adorable 6-pound, 10-ounce baby. It's hard to believe that he grew up to be a cute, lovable, 6'3", gentle giant, and the best son a dad could ever have. He was the ideal baby. Went to bed around 8 o'clock, got up around 7, or if had to, he'd sleep a little bit later. You could take him anywhere, go out to dinner for 2 hours, and people in the restaurant would smile at us and say, "What a great baby you have." Seth in school was a complex and interesting mix. He was a great student. He had studying down to a science. Whenever he had an exam, he knew beforehand exactly what grade he wanted. He then spent exactly enough time to achieve his goal. No more, no less. It was a very unique talent. He also worked out how to cope with Hebrew school. Seth was in a carpool. During the week, he was stuck going to Hebrew school because the moms dropped off the children at the door and picked them up right away. Couldn't go anywhere else. Sundays were a different story. My close friend Bill Burton had the carpool. He picked the kids up and asked them if they wanted to stop for a quick breakfast. This was around 9 o'clock. Of course, they all said yes. He took them out for breakfast, then delivered them to school an hour to an hour and a half late. We always wondered why Seth loved to go to Hebrew school on Sundays only. Seth had a passion for baseball. He played Little League. One time his coach came up with a contest to determine who on the team had the best throwing arm and aim. He put a stuffed toy pig high in a tree a few hundred feet away. If anyone hit the pig, they would win a prize. Each player had a chance to hit the pig. They all threw and didn't even come close. It was Seth's turn. He got up there, he wound up, he went through his wind-up, he aimed, threw, and knocked that pig squarely out of that tree. In high school, Seth developed a love for computers. He called himself a computer geek, but he definitely wasn't a geek. In his senior year in high school, he was repairing and upgrading computers for the Roslyn School District while he was in high school. He had his wild side as well. We found out years later that he and his friend Ken Gerber decided to drive during their lunch break from Roslyn to the Lemon Ice King of Corona, about 20 miles away. They had a craving for great ices. Unfortunately, They didn't have cell phones we could track back then, so we didn't really know about it. Of course, his passion was for computers, led him to both his career as a computer consultant as well as a pinball wizard. You may think these are dissimilar, but in reality, they are not. Seth loved to repair old pinball machines, just like he loved repairing computers. After he tinkered, he played with them. He loved the machines. He even bought a few. He loved cooking, experimenting with food, canning, preserve, etc. He could never pass a bushel of blueberries or peaches to make them into jellies, jams, preserves, and pies. He didn't make these items for himself. He wanted to share them with all his friends, relatives, and complete strangers. He was kind and giving. He'd give you the shirt off his back. Seth was also a social magnet. An hour or two after he entered a room, complete strangers, they all became his friend. He had a charismatic personality that just lit up a room. He also started Iron Seth, a takeoff on Iron Chef. He did it because he loved to cook and compete for the best food recipe. But what it really meant to Seth was the opportunity to meet old friends together and make new ones. He even proposed to Jody at an end of an Iron Seth competition. It may sound corny, but it was truly a beautiful, romantic moment. There is a huge void in my life that can never be filled. Seth, I love you more than any father could ever love his son. You were the greatest.
Seth Barris Zuckerman, you came into this world a little too early, and you left all of us way too soon. It was the morning of November 6, 1979. I was at home doing the laundry, and suddenly I looked down, and there was a puddle. I was pregnant. I was almost a month away from my due date. Frantically, I called the doctor, and he said, I think it's time. You may have to come into LIJ. I called a cab and met Manny at the front door of the hospital. And the first thing I said to him, Manny, what should I do? What should I tip this guy? I messed up the back seat of his car. He said, I'll take care of it. And 24 hours later, Seth Barris, you came into this world. Seth, I cannot find the words to express how special you were. You made it your mission to make people laugh. You could talk to anyone about anything. You were selfless and the most giving and generous person. You made conversations wherever you went, even on the line at a supermarket, talking to an absolute stranger. You touched so many lives in so many ways and meant too much to so many people. A good friend to all, a loving brother to Madeline, a soulmate to Jody, an incredible father to Hannah. You were an anchor, a rock, a warrior, a mensch, such a good boy. Seth, my love is so strong for you. No words can express how much I loved you with all my heart and all my soul. My heart is broken. I will miss you.
Manny, Jacqueline, thank you very much for that. And also on behalf of my cantor who's here with me this afternoon and our synagogue president, Sandra Weingarten, what he was able to pull off when he was going to Hebrew school here 20-something years ago, he would never get away with today, rest assured. I'd like to call up his beloved wife, Jody, to share some words now.
Can I take my mask off? I'm going to cheat. When we got married, Rabbi Siebert asked me to write him a letter. So I use that as the foundation of what I'm going to say today. December 6th, 2021. Dear Seth, it's amazing to think, I'm getting old, that our journey began really with the slip of a finger. Sure, we both swiped right and had the requisite intro phone call and follow-up. But things didn't really get interesting until a couple of months later when I accidentally called you back. What I do remember from back then, or what do I remember from back then and our path to now? It comes in a blur of images and feelings. The goofy photograph of you laughing uproariously about who knows what that you chose for your profile picture wasn't particularly flattering. But it was so filled with joy, I imagined you couldn't breathe as you experienced whatever moment you were having with your friends. I wanted to be there. Taking the train downtown after our first date and you missing your stop and escorting me to dinner with Liz, breaking every rule in the proverbial dating book by asking me out again an hour later and to a vent the next day. Walking somewhere in Tribeca or Chelsea, I was wearing a little black dress. There was a park across the street. You reached over to me and you grasped my chin. You sort of cocked your head to the side and you kissed me for the first time. Then you just kept walking. But it was sweet and it felt good. Sparklers on dessert at a restaurant. It was always my birthday when we went to dinner. I know I complained that it made the real thing a little bit less special if you did it all the time. But looking back, I realized it was your way of celebrating life in the moment and getting it for free. Waking up early on Saturday mornings in summer to go to the Long Beach Farmers Market, swimming in the ocean in August, our legs touching as we rode the waves back to shore, the crunchy feeling of dried salt water on our skin, walking the boardwalk on a balmy summer night, feeling your hand in mine, and the breeze on my face, and your reminder to stay out of the bike lane. The terrible string of jokes you tell to ease the tension in a room or try to make someone laugh. What do you call a fish with no eyes? Psh. What do you call a deer with no eyes? No idea. What do you call a deer with no eyes and no legs? Still no idea. What do you call a deer with no eyes and no legs and no private parts? Still no effing idea. The tumult and fear and anxiety and excitement and dread as we headed to the hospital to have Hannah, your diagnosis fresh and so very real. You put it all aside to welcome our little peanut into the world. Listening to you patiently try to teach Hannah about the inner workings of pinball machines. Watching the two of you cuddle on the couch, watching The Muppet Show and Fraggle Rock. Listening to her little voice belt out the Rainbow Connection and yap on and on about hockey and the Islanders. dancing with her to the hot dog song, to Istanbul, to hand clap and feel it still. That's all you. She's you in a dress with more hair. And I promise to cultivate the Sethness in her, to raise her up, and to remind her every day that her daddy lives on inside her heart. Baby, I'm so grateful for you, for the goofiness and laughter and eye rolling you brought into my life, for the off-colored jokes and obsession with Alton Brown, the Mets and fresh-picked produce, for the overwhelming love I know you have for me, for Hannah, for your friends, and for your family, for the passion and loyalty you bring to everything you do, for always seeing me, even when I didn't think you were paying attention, for accepting me for who I am and pushing me to be a better me. Your heart is so big. Thank you for everything. I miss you already. I love you. We all love you. Love, Jody. I'm sorry, Rabbi, if I stole any of your material.
No, Jody, that was beautiful, and don't worry about Rabbi Siebert. Us clergy, we're professionals. We roll with the flow. And as far as now family friends, I'd like to call up three guys together, Mike DeMilo, Bob Millar, and Mike Vernick. And I was told to introduce them as three guys who are about to cry in front of a whole mess of people. That's how they wanted their introduction.
My name's Mike DeMilio. Seth was my best friend, and I'm sure a lot of people's best friends here. Met in the typical way, as the stories go. I'm gonna fix your computer. Suddenly he's on my softball team. Then we're going on trips together, and we're talking every other night on the phone, just BSing at the end of the night. And before you know it, Seth just kind of like sunk into your life. And I was talking about Seth with my wife, and kind of realized like he was the first person I told that I was gonna ask my wife to marry me. He helped me get the ring. He carried the ring to our engagement. He was there for that. He's the first person I told when we were about to have our first child, who's only like 6 months ahead of Hannah. So we shared that fear and terrifying feeling of being a father. But I was thinking about what I was going to say today, and I just started going, well, where do I start? So I just started writing like phrases and words that remind me of Seth. And when I got done, I said, I think that's it. Like, let me just share these phrases and words, and I'll mix in a couple little stories. And I think it's pretty on point with Maddie and Seth's parents and Jody, but there for you. I mean, Seth was just, he's a guy you always count on, always there for you, in your corner, loves to help others, brilliant, hardworking, a yes I can person, a yes you can person. I owe so much of, he believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, but career-wise, friendship-wise, relationship-wise. He really helped you have confidence in you. Readiness for adventure, love for life, loving, loved, kind, gentle, friend to all, fun, funny, slightly awkward. I put slightly in there to be kind, but we all know. Crazy hair, big smile, big feet, big messes, huge heart, independent, Mel Brooks movies, we would quote those all day. Weird Al Yankovic, Dr. Spock, softball, baseball. Every time someone hits a ball to opposite field, I think of Seth. That was his MO on our softball team. A lot of the guys are here from the softball team too. And it used to get the other team so upset because here is this, kind of like goofy big guy, kind of sort of the bottom lineup, and he'd clear the bases with triples every time down the right field line. Next at bat, they didn't shift over, right field line, another triple. It was like, he was amazing. He was amazing. the New York Mets, the Islanders, pinball. We would often pick which place we'd go for a drink based on, do they have a pinball machine, and then what pinball machine do they have? Skiing, bad jokes, good eats with Alton Brown. Iron Chef / Iron Seth. Awful handwriting. You ever seen his handwriting? Remind me of like Homer Simpson episode. You know, like, clearly a forged check, you know. Getting a good deal. Freakonomics podcast. Karaoke. First guy, he was no fear. He'd go up and sing anything. Istanbul was once Constantinople. Halloween costumes. I was talking to my parents about Seth last night, and they're like, do you remember when he was a geisha for Halloween? I don't remember the scenario, but like he was picking me up at my parents' house that day in full geisha with the fan, and my parents answered the door, and they're like, oh. You know, he was just so wild with his costumes. Yeah, we had so much fun at our Halloween costumes. Dairy Queen, smell of fresh cookies. The Muppets, good food. He had good taste in food. The sound of a Mac restarting will always remind me of Seth. That like, ding, I was like, Seth's here. Family, not just how he treated his family, but how he treated his friends. Like, I consider Seth family. Like, I have to remind myself that there was a part of my life where I didn't know Seth. I didn't meet him until I was in my mid-20s. But it's like hard to imagine, like, not knowing him my whole life. The champion, he took over the softball team after I couldn't take it no more. And we went to 6 championships, won 4, and he was a big part of all of them. And I know it's silly softball stories, but, you know, we take it, we feel really good. Yeah, he still has the big trophies, and we have the whole team signed the ball. I still have the ball that everyone signed. And strong and brave. I mean, throughout this whole time, he'd ask me, how are you doing? This is like 3 weeks ago. I'm like, who cares how I'm doing, Seth? Like, how are you doing? But no, he wanted to hear about my stuff. And he never complained to me about how he was feeling, the pain he was in. Even to the last moment, he never complained. Very brave. Fruit. Fruit's a big part of Seth's life. It's a short story for you about fruit. My daughter started at this phase where she's asking, well, you know, where does this dinner come from? Where does this come from? And strawberries became a big topic. So we got her some strawberry seeds, and we planted these plants, and nothing happened because we don't have a green thumb. Strawberries never got off the ground. So we bought a plant. And we're like, all right, hey, it's already here. Like, it just needs to bloom. Nothing has happened with this plant. It's in our backyard. It just grows green things. There's no red, beautiful strawberries. I talked to my wife yesterday, and she's like, you're not going to believe this. We go out there today, and there's 2 beautiful strawberries on this plant. So we picked them. My daughter had one, and she had one. She's like, I have to believe this is Seth, and they were so sweet. And that leads me to the last word on my list, which is sweet. He was just a sweet soul. And I'll really miss him. And I just want to close with this. Like, a true legacy is, you know, what you leave behind after your body's done. And these stories and these words, you know, that I'll always think of him. Like, he's not gone as long as I always will remember him every day and talk about him. And it's about us here today, like, just connecting with each other. Like, if I'm thinking of Jody, dude, I'm just going to text you. I'm just going to call you. You know, say Billy, Gus, everyone that I know here. Let's just that's how we're going to keep him alive and with us forever. And, yeah, that's all I got for now. But I'll miss you, Seth. I love you, buddy.
I didn't write anything down. I did not trust myself to be able to read my own handwriting or be able to see it through blurry eyes. So, first of all, I apologize. On Saturday, I couldn't come up with a joke for you. And it's the spirit here today. So, with that in mind, a priest, a shaman, and a rabbit all walk into a bar. The rabbit looks at the other 2 and says, well, clearly I'm a typo. So I met Seth through Mike, over 20 years ago now. And my first thought of him was, what I'm hearing a lot here today, you know, what an odd duck. That was through my own limited vision, though. Odd duck is a weird way to phrase it. Seth beat to his own drum, unabashedly. He knew who he was, and he lived to be his true self. He was unique. Irreplaceable is a better way to call him. He was unlike anybody else and truly irreplaceable. Great friend. When I went through my divorce, I was pretty much a broken guy. And Seth was there like few others could be. He lived in the same town, checked on you all the time, always wanted to know how you were doing. Got me out doing things, polar bear plunges. He was my race partner. We did the Spartan race with Jody and family. We did the Warrior Dash. We were the Industrious Beavers. There were no trophies for that. We weren't that good. But we always finished as a team. He was always there for you. He was my scuba dive partner. Who knew he knew how to scuba dive? He was great at it. We only did it a couple times, but amazing. We were both kind of clueless. I'll give you one cute story. We went for our scuba dive test. And the guy who was there was, he was on something. He was not with it, kind of a strange guy in his own right. And we rented our suits, and I got my medium, Seth got his double extra large, and he decided to buy it because it would save him money over the long term. And, he kept complaining about how tight his suit was. And, is this really a double XL? It's so tight. And I got in the water, and I couldn't sink. And I was always quick to sink in these things, and I couldn't figure it out. And the guy was just like, you need more weights, you need more weights. And he put like 20 pounds of weight on us. And finally, I started to sink, and the first thing that happened was a big thing of cold water went right into the wetsuit, and just, we had to go 60 feet down through these tunnels, and it was freezing the whole time. And we get out of the water, and he's like, this suit is so stupid tight. And I look at him, I'm like, I think I'm wearing the double XL, Seth. He's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. He takes off. Poor guy did the whole dive with a medium-sized suit. It was the little things like that, man, that just so irreplaceable. I'm gonna miss him so much. But Mr. and Mrs. Zuckerman, you raised a really amazing guy. And I heard somewhere that people die twice. They leave the physical world, and that's the first time. And the second time they leave is when people stop remembering them. That's never going to happen. He was such a remarkable guy. As long as there's breath in these lungs, he'll be remembered and talked about endlessly. And I'm sure he carries on through all of us in the same way. And though he left us behind, he left us with a beautiful family to continue forward. And Jody and Hannah, so happy that you guys were there for him in ways that our friends could not be. Right up until the end. And he ended strong. Like Mike said, he never complained about anything. Always asked how somebody else was doing. And it's kind of poetic in a way. His favorite thing was the Iron Seth. He was the Iron Seth. He was also the special ingredient, and we'll miss him dearly. I love you, brother. Thank you all. Thank you for being such a great part of his life.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mike. If you heard some of Seth's stories, his travels to California, I'm his friend Mike from California, not to be confused with his other friend Mike from California. We met about 15 years ago on the birthright trip to Israel. It was a very special time. We bonded over computers and networks and IT stuff, and that's what we like to talk about quite a bit. In fact, anytime there was a Apple conference and the late Steve Jobs would get on stage, or the folks that came after him and announced the latest products, we'd discuss their merits and what we thought about where the future of tech is going. And he was always the first to call me after that, and we'd always talk about that and other things. And a lot of people talked about Seth's big heart. He had an enormous heart. Anytime I needed anything, any kind of advice, talk about anything at all, he was there for me. 3,500 miles away. If I needed anything, it would be at my door within a couple of days. And then one day, I saw his big heart. It's because he was so spontaneous, really. Whenever we wanted to take a trip, I would suggest a place, a location, and he'd be out there in a few days, whether it be Nevada or trips to Utah, all around California, skiing. And then one day, I suggested we take a trip out to Hawaii, and he and Jody came out. And on day 2, he wasn't feeling so well. We didn't know it at the time, but that would be the start to what later caused his cancer. We went to the hospital that day. They did an ultrasound. I got to see his big heart, his big, beautiful beating heart. Later that day, they would take him away to a different island. And my wife Marina and I spent the rest of the vacation both without him and with him. We would pack his bags, ship him out. We'd be on the phone with him, try to be there with him. The next year, when we took our baby moon, we wanted to go out to Hawaii as well, and we ended up deciding that we'd go straight to Oahu, because that's where the big hospitals were. We had a complication with our twins, and they went to the hospital for 6 months, and that's where we stayed in Oahu for 6 months. And to this day, I credit him for saving my kids' lives. It feels so difficult to talk about him in past tense. I really hope we can all remember him as being here with us now and in the future. I love you, my friend. I hope we can always think of you as being here with us now and in the future. So sorry that I came here dressed like this. We really didn't expect this. And again, you were spontaneous with us up until the last moment. We were mid-flight when you went. I really wish I could see you like we intended to that one last time. But of course, you had to surprise us one last time. And here we are. I love you. I hope we can all remember him for the way he is and not the way he was.
I forgot one more fruit story. So we were on a softball team, and our team was Sandlot guys, just a fun little crew, a mix of different people, different backgrounds, and you know, a lot of guys would show up with their beer or their beers or and Seth would roll in with little canned jams, like, hey guys, here's your jams, And the team would just like look at me like, is this guy for real? Like, he's giving it, and then you go rip that triple again and clear the bases. All right, that's the missing fruit story.
Thank you. I want to also say to you three gentlemen, because I know I was told Seth was a big Trekkie. I think it was the conclusion of The Wrath of Khan, where, as you made reference to, was it Dr. McCoy who said about Spock, he's not really gone as long as we remember him. And that's exactly what you touched on. So I think you'd appreciate that, of course. I'd like to call up now, it's my honor and privilege to call up the rabbi who officiated at the wedding of both Seth and Jody, Rabbi Larry Siebert of the Town and Village Synagogue. He's been the rabbi there now for about 30 years, and I can remember way back when I was in college actually calling him to discuss my interest in rabbinical school. So it's my honor to have him speak here this afternoon.
It was just 2.5 years ago that many of us were standing together on Windham Mountain as Hannah's parents, Seth and Jody, became husband and wife. What a gift it was that Seth and Jody gave to each other. They have been together since 2014, and as Seth said in his letter to me, you followed an unconventional path. You set 3 wedding dates, and as Seth said, the 3rd time is a charm. And you finally got married when your beautiful Hannah was 2 years old. And that was because you had made the decision not to wait to bring new life into your world, to see life continue. Seth was such a wonderful and loving and patient father. He was able to be with Hannah at her level, focused on the things that were most important to her. And he did it with great love and respect for her as a person, as a human being. Hannah was blessed by the loving presence and attention of her father, and her joy for life and looking at life as an adventure brought Seth so much happiness. Jody, you and Seth had such an intense relationship, packing it all in while you could. He wrote about this in his letters, but I only looked last night to see what the warrior dash actually is. So from the warrior dash to trips to numerous spots around the globe, even the ones that ended up in the ER, he said, brought you great joy, brought you two closer to each other. You lived life together to its absolute fullest. And he always made time, even when it wasn't easy. He made the time to be with his family and with his many, many friends, cooking for and hosting as many of you as possible. And as we all know, Seth loved to laugh. Jody already told you the psh joke. And I wasn't going to tell the other part of it. Yeah. And the idea that you met Seth with that photograph, not so flattering, but laughing. And when you said, imagining him there, that you wanted to be there wherever it was he was, that was so hilarious, that was so joyful. Well, the fortunate thing, Jody, is that you did get to be there with him in that joy. You and Seth, as he said in his letter to me, shared a lifetime of adventures in the all too brief time you had with each other. You so deeply appreciated who he was, even if every time you went out, he claimed it was your birthday and you got sparklers on your cake. But I loved what you said there was that it helped you to realize that it was Seth's way of celebrating life in the moment. And that was what was so special and so wonderful about Seth. Even though he knew he might not have so many moments left, he lived each one to its fullest. Jody wrote this in your note to Seth. We've been through quite a ride already, and however long the rest of our journey may be, I am honored that I get to do it with you. May we live each day as the first, the last, and the only day we have with each other. Together with your beautiful Hannah, both sets of parents, Seth's sister and family, and the extended family, which, as his friend said, includes everyone here in this room. You were all part of Seth's family. All of you did exactly that. You appreciated each and every day you had with him. And my prayer for all of us is that our memories of Seth, as painful as it may be to recall them, that our memories of him will bring with them the blessings of his life into our lives, and that eventually they will be a comfort to us as well. Yehi zichro baruch. May his memory be a blessing. Amen.
Yishach Kochacha, Rabbi Siebert. There's really nothing that I could say that hasn't so eloquently and beautifully and lovingly been said by his friends and family and by my colleague. But one thing I just want to briefly mention, if it's okay, if I have, by Jody's leave, because something she had mentioned to me last night. She had referred to it about how they had met online, and it was only accidentally that she had called him back. She said it was, that term butt dial, and that's how they reconnected, and they ended up going out, and this time, it really stuck. But what it made me think about is the difference between chance and fate. Because fate, or what we would call beshert, right, it's meant to be. We have very little, if any, control over something that's fated. But chance is something that, if it happens to us at the right time, at the right moment, if we're lucky, if we see the opening is created for us, it can create a world of opportunities. It can open up a window into another world. And in this case, I think what happened was it was a combination of both. You were meant to be together for however much time you had, but it was chance, and a lucky chance, that reconnected you and brought about this relationship that wasn't long enough but was beautiful, was about quality over quantity of time, and the beautiful daughter Hannah that you both were able to bring forth into this world. And I think that's very fitting when describing somebody like Seth, because he took every opportunity he could. And I know it sounds trite, but he lived it to its fullest. One of the stories also, Joey, that you mentioned to me was that people used to they would gravitate towards him, and they would love to come and sit with him and just tell them their life stories, strangers. And it wasn't just by chance, because that was also something that I think he was fated for, because he really cared about doing that. He put that out there in the world. You told me that he would actually work on jokes, actually research materials for jokes when he was going in for, this is true, for going in for chemo treatments so that he can entertain the nurses. So we're laughing, but think about that for a moment. You're going in for chemo treatment, you probably have a lot of things on your mind, right? But what he was thinking about was, I want the nurses to be entertained, right? I want them to be able to laugh. I want them to be able to smile. That's a very special person. It's a truly very caring person. And the only thing I just want to say is, because today is the last day of Hanukkah, is that something I've mentioned before in other aspects is the interesting thing about lighting the Khanukiyah, when we light it with the shamash, is, of course, you're taught each and every night you add a candle and you light from left to right, the newest candle first. Fire is the only thing I can think of in our tradition. Fire is the only thing I can think of in nature, where when it gives off a flame, you transfer a flame, it doesn't deplete it, right? If I'm giving a gift of money from my account, I'm withdrawing money out for Hanukkah to write somebody a check or to give them cash, I'm depleting now some of my savings. Now, it's for a good cause, I want to do this, but I'm going to have less money as a result, right? But that's not the case with fire. Right? When you take that shamash, that flickering candle, and you light, last night, 8 candles, right? That shamash, that initial candle, that flame wasn't lessened, right? It was still as substantial as it was before. Think about that. If I have a glass of water, someone asks for some water, and I pour some of my water into their glass, I have now less water. It's not the case with fire. But there's another exception to that. Love. Right? When you give love to somebody, when you give affection, when you give friendship, it doesn't have to deplete from your initial resource, who you are, right? What you represent. That's why parents can give unconditional love for their children, because they have it to give, and it doesn't lessen them anymore. And Seth was one of those people that I think he was easy to talk to, and people wanted to talk to them, and he wanted to talk to them because he had so much love to give. He didn't feel it was taking anything away, right? To put a smile on somebody's face, to help a friend who was having difficulty with his children, to entertain, to create memories, celebrations, parties, jam, right? That's the type of person he was. He wanted to put it all out there and leave nothing behind. And I think the best way we could really honor Seth and honor his memory is by taking the love that he had for so many of us and just transmitting and passing it down, passing it to our children, our grandchildren, our nieces and nephews, our siblings, our friends, because in that way, he's never truly gone, and he does live on. I think someone as strong with the strongest soul as Seth, that candle, that light that flickers, even if we're not lighting the Hanukkah candles tonight, the flame of who he was will never truly be extinguished. Even if it is in this world physically, it's living on in the next world, and it'll light the way for all of us. I'd like to ask everyone to please rise as we're led in the Amalei Rachamim, the traditional funeral dirge. We'll recite it here in the Hebrew and the English, and then you'll hear it again if you're joining us at the graveside. Bat Yaakova, Bat Sheva.
אל מלא רחמים, שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע, מזהירים לנשמת שיעה יהודה בן מנחם צבי, ויוחבה בת שבע. בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו, אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן.
Amalei Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Seth Zuckerman, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May Seth's soul be bound up in the bond of life. May Seth rest in a most well-deserved peace. And let us all say, Amen. I'd like to mention that the interment will be taking place immediately following the service here at New Montefiore Cemetery in Farmingdale, New York. That's just over the Suffolk border. If you're joining us, we'll be lining up, led by the processional with Gutterman's just outside. We'll probably be lining up towards the exit of the synagogue itself. So I will request to try to go to your cars as quickly as possible. I'd also like to announce that Shiva will be taking place at Manny and Jacqueline's home, 129 Tara Drive in East Hills, tonight from 7 to 9 p.m. There will be an evening service as well, sometime after 7:15 or so. And Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday will be from 1 to 3 p.m. and again from 7 to 9 p.m. With an evening service on all of those nights, about 7:15 or so. Friday will be 1 to 3 p.m. We're going to end early because of Shabbat, and then the family will be sitting again Saturday night from 7 to 9 p.m., again with an evening service around that time. There's also going to be a Zoom Shiva on Tuesday and Thursday from 4:30 to 5:30. The link has not gone out yet, I understand, but it will be going out. And I'd like to call up to be honorary pallbearers to help us escort Seth's casket to the waiting hearse. I'd like to call up Roy, Ross, Andrew, Bruce, Jeff, and Leo. Again, that's Roy, Ross, Andrew, Bruce, Jeff, and Leo. And if his immediate family, Seth's immediate family, would also like to follow along with the casket, I'd like to ask everyone else, extended family and friends, to just remain standing for the time being until the casket has left the sanctuary.